Today, I'm going to talk about what it's like to be a YouTuber or a content creator. Because I've been doing this content creation online for a number of years now, and I've got a lot to share when it comes to my experience. And I've also got some ideas about where social media and content creation and consumption, so if you create content, you make content. If you consume it, then you watch it and listen to it. I'm going to talk about where that is going to go in the future. I'm going to look at an article with that. And then at the end, I'm going to give some tips on what to do if you want to become a content creator. Now, I think this is all relevant when it comes to learning English because hopefully this is an exciting topic and you're going to get some good listening practice. But we're also going to use some good words and phrases today and talk about things in terms of trends. So I'm going to start with this article. But before I do, I just need to mention very quickly, again, welcome to you if you're new here. Please subscribe to this podcast. Just click that subscribe button. And if you enjoy this, then send this episode or this video, or if you're watching on YouTube, to a friend. So we're going to talk about one of my favorite websites, which is explodingtopics.com. They have a great Instagram channel as well and a great Twitter handle. I'll leave links in the description. And they talk about trends, and they use this algorithm to show you what is trending at the moment. So they've said, for example, during the height of the pandemic in 2020, that certain things were happening, like people were buying Peloton, people were ordering at-home meals, meal delivery services, and they look at trends like that. And they have won 7 cultural trends for 2022 to 2025. And I was looking at this before, and number 1 is the creator economy keeps growing. The creator economy keeps growing. So the creator economy is where creators earn money by creating content on YouTube, on podcasts, on Instagram, etc. And I'll talk about the ways you can earn money later if you're interested in this. But again, this is just great listening practice, so stay with me. But I'm going to read a little bit of this to you, and you can look at the graphs by clicking the link in the description. But it says, thanks largely to platforms like Instagram and YouTube, people are spending more time consuming content created by individuals. So there's a difference here because with the creator content, it's normally done by individuals, although some big companies are on YouTube and Instagram as well, but it's mainly funded through or driven by individuals like me, like my friend Shayna at Espresso English, Gabby at Go Natural English, Vanessa, Speak English with Vanessa, and Ethan at Real Life English. We are all like individual creators where we create content online, and in our case, it's English lessons. But there are a variety of different people doing this. In the fitness industry is huge, for example. And I follow some fitness people. They're good personalities. The ones I follow, they're fun to watch. They have some interesting things. But the ones I follow tend to be individuals with ideas and specific ways of doing things. And they talk about what they've learned, and they share their results, and they share what they have done. And it goes on to say, and viewers are increasingly flocking. Okay, great word. We'll talk about that in a second. And viewers are increasingly flocking to platforms like Twitch to watch amateur content instead of professionally produced television. Now, flocking to platforms. This means going to platforms in big numbers and quickly. So you can just imagine it in your head where lots of people are going to Twitch. People are downloading it. They're watching stuff on Twitch. And if you don't know what Twitch is, it's a live streaming platform. Now, in terms of numbers, it says here, it's estimated that 50 million people around the world now consider themselves creators. And one survey even shows that more kids today want to become YouTube stars than astronauts. So I know this. Kids are obsessed with YouTube at the moment. YouTube, and when they get a little bit older, it seems TikTok becomes really popular too. Now, here are some more stats. Speaking of YouTube, as of 2020, there were more than 51 million channels on their platform. 51 million YouTube channels. I'm just one of 51 million. It's incredible. It says here, a market that didn't exist 20 years ago is now worth roughly $14 billion. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about my journey into being a creator. And at the time, we tended to call ourselves English teachers, because a lot of people who went online at the start, they were given one-to-one lessons online. So most of the people I knew who were English teachers were given one-to-one lessons online. And then what happened with me was I started to use especially Facebook as a platform to find more students. So I would produce lessons and write stuff on Facebook and share my website on Facebook to try and find more one-to-one lessons. And then I think it was in 2013, I started a YouTube channel. And interestingly, it was under a different name. It was JDA English. And then in 2014, I changed the name to Fluency, because I stopped doing one-to-one lessons and instead I focused on creating YouTube content and also selling online courses. And I remember back then, the big YouTube channels for English teachers had 50 or 60,000 subscribers, and getting to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube was a massive thing back then in terms of the big channels, the biggest channels of English teachers. I remember Rachel's English was probably the biggest one that I remember. She's still going now, still producing really good stuff. So she's been an online creator for a long time too. And she was a big channel at the time. And my channel, it grew to begin with, but I think it took about 3 years to reach 100,000 subscribers. Now, as of January 2022, I have 610,000 subscribers. And other English learning channels have multiple millions of subscribers. So when it says here, and the title is, the creator economy keeps growing, yes, it does. People are consuming content on YouTube, and more people are producing content on YouTube. But not just YouTube now. Instagram is huge. Facebook used to be the number one platform from what I remember when it came to English lessons and creating lessons. That's not as big now. Instagram is massive now. And then obviously we have different channels growing up, different platforms. There are different ones in different countries, for example, but another big one around the world is TikTok, which I started to make some lessons on TikTok. But I do want to talk about, this is a good way to talk about why I'm not creating as many lessons on Instagram and TikTok right now, and why I'm focused more on the podcast. And it's for one simple reason. The watch time or the listening time for a podcast is much higher. The attention is much higher. Whereas on TikTok especially, it's about next video. Okay, I see this video, next one, next one, next one, next one. And you just go through this endless stream of an English lesson, a funny video, a fitness person, maybe some politics, more comedy, where it's just constant new videos in your face all the time. And I was thinking that making those are fun, but I don't think they have as much of an impact as a podcast. I think the podcast is my favorite thing to do, and that's why I've been making more podcasts than anything else right now. I've been doing more audio lessons, and from what I've heard, this is a rumor, it seems like YouTube are going to start their own podcasting platform, which is really interesting. And it amazed me that my most watched lesson on YouTube is actually an audio lesson. and that my podcast episodes do better than when I make a lesson with me on screen. I don't know what that says about me and my face, or me on screen with different text effects and everything like that. But I do understand some people prefer that, and I am going to make more of those in 2022. Now, I just want you to have a little think about how you consume content and how much content you consume. Because for me, I listen to a lot of things. When I'm in the car driving, a YouTube video or a podcast. When, in fact, I have the YouTube app, but I listen more than I watch on YouTube. So I use it like a podcasting platform. There are certain videos, like if I'm watching football highlights, where I can't do that. But for the most part, I like to listen to football podcasts and history podcasts. Those are the two things I listen to. So for me, I consume most of my content long form when I am exercising, maybe going for a walk sometimes, mainly when I'm doing housework and I'm alone at home, where I'll just put in some earphones, find a podcast and wash up and do that type of stuff, which what you might be doing right now. I also like to do it to fall asleep. So I'll set a sleep timer, put in some earphones, listen to a podcast, and then fall asleep while I do that. But I'm sure you also use apps like Instagram and TikTok, and those are quite fun to pass the time. They're quite entertaining in that sense. But again, creating that kind of content, I know a lot of people will just watch 10 seconds and it's gone. And I'm not sure if that would have as much of an impact as a long form podcast. But let me know, would you like me to create more of that short form content on Instagram and TikTok where I'm making short videos? Because now I think about it, probably a combination of the two is good, where you can listen to long form content, but then I create smaller lessons based around the long-term content on different platforms. But let's talk about what it's like being a creator. And I'm going to just share my experience of this. And I think a good place to start is just to say that there have been ups and downs, where sometimes I'm all in and I'm making content 8 hours a day and I love it and I'm posting on Instagram every day and everything's going strongly. And then there are other times when I just run out of that creative juice, which is a good term to use, like the creative energy. And I don't feel like I'm in that creative space. So it is much harder to do in those situations. But for the most part, I love this job, and it is my job to create podcast episodes and YouTube videos for you. And as you know, at the moment, I'm doing it once a week, released on Thursday. I was thinking today that I might make it twice a week. But the key to this is that you have to stay consistent with it. So you will have noticed that over the last year or 18 months, I've made a video every week without stopping. Since I started the podcast in April, I've released an episode every week without fail. And part of being a content creator is making sure that you're consistent, because an audience, as you know, loves consistency. You want to know that there's a podcast every week and that it's going to be there. I know that people wait for my podcast episode and they see it's live and then they'll start listening to it and they expect it. I find that is really useful for me as well when it comes to different YouTube channels that I like. There's a football channel called 90 Min, which has a podcast episode every Monday and Thursday. They didn't do it for 2 weeks and I really missed it. They took a break over Christmas and New Year and I really missed it. But I expect it to be there every Monday and Thursday, and part of my routine on Monday and Thursday is to work out and listen to those episodes. So as a creator, people like that consistency. And when it comes to starting out, when I started out, I tried to create something that was really polished, which is a good word to use. That means it's really well produced. So you can think of using a good camera, a good microphone, and editing lots of text on screen, doing lots of cuts, and making it really good. However, that took me about 8 hours per video to make. And I thought that if I could make it really well produced, then my channel would stand out. However, it wasn't sustainable because it took too long to make the lessons, the videos when I started YouTube. And I was also teaching one-to-one at the time, so I couldn't keep that going. And I think just the key at the start is that you're going to find your voice, you're going to find your style, you're going to find videos and content that works if you start creating it. If you get lots of practice and you listen to your audience and you learn from your audience. Because in my YouTube stats, I can see which types of videos work the best. And it's always surprising. For example, there was one I made recently, which was, I think I made it in November. And it was 9 other ways to say, I don't know. And I put so much effort into this video. So much effort. It took me hours and hours to do. And I used my new green screen. And it was the kind of video where other teachers are making and they're really, really popular. And it got 14,613 views, which for my channel is quite low. And especially because the video I made the week before got 52,000 and it was a podcast episode. And then the one after got a podcast episode, it got 23,000. So 10,000 more views nearly. And again, just another podcast episode. So that shows me that people want the audio, the longer form audio, 20 to 30 minutes. Those are quite popular on my channel. So when you're creating content, it's important to think about what people want to listen to, what people want to watch, what are people watching, and do more of that. But again, you don't know until you try. You don't know until you try these things out. And then another thing I do, which I think is really useful, is to use something like Apple Notes or any note-taking app, whatever you want to use. And I have a tab here and it's lesson ideas. And I create a list of lesson ideas that I want to go through. For example, I've got the past perfect, which I've had that forever. And I don't think I'm going to make a new video on the past perfect. But one of my podcast episodes recently was about shadowing in memory. And basically what I did is I just put out an outline of what I wanted to do. Bullet points, for example, of what I want to talk about. And then leave the links in there, which I use to talk about as well. And that's what I did for this podcast episode. Basic ideas of what I want to talk about, the links that I want to use, and then I'll read from the websites and leave the links in the description. But then every now and then I'll go to a coffee shop and just say, okay, for the next 2 hours, I'm just going to write down podcast and YouTube titles that I want to do. Go through my old videos, see what's been working, see what can change from there, and then do more of what's working. And then from there, it's about creating, knowing that it's never going to be perfect. Never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect content. I mean, some of mine are close. Just joking. But you're never going to get that perfect thing. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more comfortable you feel doing it. It's weird talking into a microphone in a room on your own, talking into a microphone and then looking at a camera, or talking into your phone. Because I used to do some vlogging around town. So I used to take my camera, talk on the street, go into coffee shops, do that type of thing. And then I realized that's just not me. It just doesn't feel right doing that kind of content. But for different people, it's different. So try different forms of content, write down lots of ideas, start producing, and then get feedback from your audience. And the best way to do that is just look at your stats, see what people like, see the watch time on different videos and podcast episodes. So I think also just with the trend, like it says in this article, it keeps growing. The creator economy keeps growing. And I think the more time that we're just spending on these phones, the more content we're going to watch. And I talked about that in another episode, talking about social media, the good side, the bad side, and how to use it to your advantage. So using it to your advantage is, for example, creating content, if that's what you want to do, but also taking in content, which is another word for consuming content, that's going to help you. So for your case, it might be to learn new things in English, or if you like history, to listen to history podcasts in English, to listen to my podcast in English, so that you're using social media to your benefit. A lot of these new apps come out, and yes, people are moving to TikTok and everything else, but YouTube keeps growing, podcasts keep growing. My podcasts on Spotify and Apple iTunes especially, every new episode gets more listeners. So if you are if you are listening on one of those platforms, then welcome to you. And if you've not subscribed yet, please subscribe now. And then, like I said, please share this with a friend if you find it useful. And I hope you have found this useful in terms of just getting that listening practice where I'm talking about a topic, not really talking about the language, although we have learned some good words like flocking to, taking in, creating, consuming, all those types of things. And I hope you have learned some new words and phrases. And I think next week, what we might discuss is trends when it comes to education, because we have discussed this a little bit in terms of the metaverse. I love that episode. And if you haven't listened to that one, just take a listen. It's really interesting. But there's, or at least the topic's interesting. I'm sure you'll find it interesting. But there's also these 7 emerging education trends, which we might go into next week and talk about online learning and whether this is something that's here to stay, if it's going bigger and bigger, etc. And again, I'd love to know your thoughts on all of this and where you think it's going. But for this episode, share your thoughts about consuming content, which platforms you like, and if you are a content creator, then leave a comment as your channel and tell us all what you create. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye for now.